Welcome everybody. I'm Jean, and I'm so glad to see all these people here. It's great. I never know. And so welcome. And I want to thank the Friends of the Milton Public Library for their support of my programs. I'm very pleased to have Bob here to talk about the first female pilot, Amelia Earhart. Now let me tell you about Bob. Again, he's an avid history fan and devotes his research to interesting and inspiring topics from American chronology. He grew up in Lewiston, Maine, graduated from Babson College, and then served 2 years in the Army, both stateside and a little while in Panama. After moving to Boston, he worked at the St. Regis Paper Company for 35 years, but he always continued his passion for history, particularly naval history. I'm very glad to host him this evening on all these interesting topics he has. Now, please join me in a warm welcome for Bob Beach.
Thank you, Jean. Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. Born in Atchison, Kansas, July 24th, 1897, Amelia Earhart would be one of America's most famous aviators and authors. She entered the world of aviation at its earliest years. She was wildly successful in a career that was mostly experienced by men. Yes, there were working women who chose to enter this new and exciting mode of transport, but for the most part, it was a man's world. In addition to her achievements in aviation, she was an advocate for women's rights, a promoter of women's suffrage, and she was a member of the National Women's Party. Her firm belief was that women should have the same access to career opportunities as men would have, and that would serve as a role model for all of her efforts. Among her first as an aviator, she was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic, albeit as a passenger, but still the first woman to fly across the Atlantic. 4 years later, she was the first woman to solo across the Atlantic in a journey of 2,408 miles from Newfoundland to Ireland in just under 15 hours. She set a new record. As her skill in flying and growing worldwide fame propelled her to attempt more record-breaking flights, she would become more developed and more capable, and she would ride the wave of all these new accomplishments. She loved flying. She dedicated her life to breaking through barriers. Ultimately, she would be lost on a flight around the world in 1937. There were extensive searches in the Pacific, but her plane was never found, nor was any sign of her. Her disappearance continues to be a mystery, which continues to fascinate many people. The more you read about Amelia Earhart, the more possible scenarios there were as to what happened when she disappeared. It's almost kind of like the Kennedy conspiracy. I mean, there's always a school of thought that it was this, it was this, it was this. What is interesting to me is she was lost in 1937. The files are still classified, the government files. They still had top secret clearance. So they were never released. I'll touch on some of the possible alternatives at the end of the talk. Her courage, determination, and free spirit continue to inspire people that much is possible if one pursues their dreams. This is not Amelia, but he had a lot to do with capturing her love and interest in flying. Charles Lindbergh, Spirit of St. Louis. You know, it's not that long ago in history, but this was state-of-the-art transportation. I mean, doing the research, there were no air routes, there were no air terminals. All of that was just waiting to grow and to to explode, which it did in the early 20s. As a young child of the prairies, Amelia loved spending time in the barn, poring over old maps and globes, wondering what life might be like in these distant worlds. She'd play games in which she traveled all over the world. This had to feed her desire to explore. Her father had a job with the railroad. That was another source of travel for her and the family. They would ride in comfort throughout the Midwest. Because my father was a railroad man, it has been my fortune to roll. Meeting new people was a key part of her youth. As a child, she was a daredevil. She loved speed, and she loved taking chances. The more you read about her, the more you realize when she was in flight, when she was getting ready to undertake a mission, all cylinders were firing. She loved it. Sports appealed to her. She was a daredevil. In college, she did well, and also in prep school. She did very well solving technical problems, but she hated to have to explain the step-by-step process. She did not like dealing with petty details. And this is a trait that she would carry with her all her life. You know, they say it's the little things that get you. As a child, because of her father's railroad job, the family moved all over. Atchison, Kansas City, Des Moines, St. Paul, Toronto, Boston. All these cities were trying to claim her as one of their own. Unfortunately, many of the moves that she made were the result of her father's bout with alcohol. He had a severe problem with alcoholism. And that would be a burden she would have to deal with for many years. In 1920, she was working as a nurse's aide with the Canadian Red Cross. And she saw 4 Royal Canadian pilots all banded together, hobbling out of the building. Each one had lost a leg. And that was her first vision of the danger of the physical danger of flying. She always remembered that. She worked in Toronto, and she also was very, very much against war. There is so much that must be done in a civilized, barbarous like war. Later that year, she moves to Los Angeles. The young aviation industry is exploding with growth. Planes are being built, airports, terminals under construction, flying routes being determined, and more people learning to fly. Following World War I, airplane design advanced at a rapid pace. The newer planes were more sturdy and capable of faster speeds. They could travel further and higher, but they weren't necessarily safer. It was still a dangerous venture. Pilots, far and away, mostly men who had received their training in the service during the war. For women, the initial appeal was to be a passenger, just to get out and see to get into a plane and fly over. And you know, they would shut down towns sometimes when some of these air devils would fly in and they'd do stunts. And like a guy would land a plane on a boxcar as the train was moving along. It drew a big crowd. But for women, it was basically getting a ride, being the passenger. One of the major challenges for all of the aviators in the early 20s was the Atlantic Ocean. Until May 21st, 1927, when Lindbergh flies solo across the Atlantic. Aviation and its possibilities changed overnight. While a woman did not expect to be trained and qualified to become a pilot, they did pursue the challenge of being the first woman to cross the Atlantic as a passenger. 1927, Princess Anne Lowenstein Worthen, she's 63. She set out with a pilot and a co-pilot, leaving Canada to England. They were never seen again. There's a 63-year-old woman is setting out on a flight across the Atlantic. Other women, America, Ruth Elder, Frances Grayson, they both attempted separate journeys. Elder would be picked up off the Azores. Grayson would be lost in 1927. In 1927, a total of 19 flyers were lost on journeys. In 1928, another attempt was made by a wealthy English woman, Mrs. Frederick Guest. She's the wife of the British Secretary of State for Air in the British government. She had bought a plane, it was a tri-motor Hawker, from Commander Richard Byrd, the Arctic explorer. Her pilot would be Wilmer Stoltz. Her pilot was going to be, well, Wilmer Stoltz, he was a decorated war hero, very, very accomplished pilot. The mechanic on board was a fellow named Lewis Gordon. He was qualified. At the same time, a publicist from New York heard about this possible flight involving a woman going across the Atlantic. His name was George P. Putnam, Putnam Publishing. And he is a player. He is a very big factor in this life. So Putnam is working on becoming the exclusive publisher of this story. And he heard they were looking for a woman aviator in the Boston area to be part of this mission. Because Mrs. Guest, who was originally American, but she married into a wealthy British family, her family was not enthused about her taking a cross-country flight. So she backed out of it. She succumbed to family pressure. But she was adamant that the woman selected must be an American girl of the right image. Putnam enlists the help of another public relation man, Captain Rayleigh. Word of such a potential aviator produced one Amelia Earhart in the Boston area. April 19th, 1928, a call is made. Rayleigh's the PR guy. And he says, "You don't know me, but my name is Rayleigh. Would you be willing to do something important for the cause of aviation?" At a meeting of the selection committee, Amelia agrees to becoming a member of the crew. Stoltz, the pilot, will get $20,000. Gordon, the mechanic, will get $5,000. Amelia will get nothing. And if by any chance she does make money, it goes to the publishing company. During the interview with the selection committee, Amelia had some thoughts. Would she be able to do some of the flying? If asked, of course she'd go. Who could resist such a shining adventure? Yes, she would go, not for money, not for fame, but because of how much she loved flying. She loved adventure, and she felt totally alive in taking risks. They wanted her. She said yes. In Boston, one of the reasons, she was in the Boston area and she was working at this facility called the Denison House, and they would teach orphans from Syria and various countries English, and it was a charitable operation, and she was good. She dealt with young kids. She was a very good role model, but that's how they found out that she was in the area. she's got a license. In 1923, she had a license. Here is the plane. This is the plane that Louise Guest bought from Commander Byrd. It had done some exploration in the Arctic, and here it is. So she says yes. The plane is made ready. They remove seats for extra storage and fuel. Newest radio equipment is installed, and all they're waiting for now is good weather. You forget how important or how much of an effect the weather can have on flights in those days. Plus, there wasn't a lot of accurate forecasting, so the weather was always a key factor. They were slated to take off in May, but rain and fog delayed the flight until June 3rd. Finally, at 6:30 on June 3rd, the Friendship takes off, headed for Nova Scotia. From there, they're going to head to Newfoundland. At 12 p.m. on the 4th of June, they land in Crepasset Bay. That's what Amelia they're going to be taking off from. Bad weather. Bad weather stalls them for 13 days. Fog and storm. They played cards. They walked the beaches. Stoltz, the pilot, quote, drank heavily. The man that she hooks up with, either a pilot or a navigator or a technical expert, always in the background, is alcohol.
Oh, there's a woman in the middle of that picture with a helmet on, the leather helmet on, is that her?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's her. So, at last, they play cards, they're waiting for the good weather. After 13 days, they take off. Heavy rain, fog, turbulent winds that shakes the plane violently. Amelia keeps very few notes at this time. Darkness passes into the early morning, and suddenly Gordon shouts, "Land!" 20 hours and 40 minutes after leaving Newfoundland, they land in a tidal river in Wales. A small crowd gathered on the shore, not knowing who they were. Amelia waves her scarf, and the man ashore tips his hat. A place lunch brought the flyers ashore. A wildly enthusiastic crowd surrounds them. Somebody stole a scarf. It was Devlin. The entire crew were heroes. Years later, monuments were erected to the crew. But Amelia did not feel like a hero. She said, it was a good experience, but all I did was lie on my tummy and take pictures of the clouds. I was just baggage, like a sack of potatoes. She was asked, what of it? Still the first woman to fly the Atlantic, and what's more, the first woman pilot. Oh well, maybe someday I'll try to go home. She tries to shift the praise to Stoltz and Gordon. The crowd persists in wanting to touch her, to see her, to cheer her. An instant celebrity. She has tea with Churchill. She's dancing with the Duke of Windsor. She tours London in a yellow Rolls Royce. She's invited to balls at the embassy. She receives a cable from Calvin Coolidge. She's trying to avoid the adulation, and she's trying to point out that the real heroes were Stoltz and Gordon, all to no avail. As much as she wants the future in aviation, she will gain it by her own deeds. Here's the plane. Here's Amelia's got the helmet on. That's the Lord Mayor of Southampton. The tall fellow is her pilot, Stoltz. Instant celebrityhood. People just wanted to be near her. If there was one person who really liked this publicity, was George Putnam, one of the key publicists of the trip. He advises her on what to wear, what cities to tour in America, how to respond to the crowds and celebrity status, and public engagements. Don't wear that silly hat, he said. He said she belonged to that small class created by a combination of chance and courage, whom mankind may be said to make and pay for being its heroes. Ultimately, she will yield to his advice. He's the ticket. He is going to market her. And all of this acclaim and fanfare and publicity is going to do one thing for her, and that's going to make her more and more able to fly. Just a couple other notes on the flight. Just before they landed, they're nearing the end of the flight, and they spotted some ships below. And in an attempt to find out where they were, they would write a note, and wrap it in paper around an orange, and then drop it on the ship, hoping that the ship would give them their coordinates. This is, you just crossed the Atlantic Ocean, and this is how you find it. When the French ship landed on the River of Wales, she had 50 gallons of fuel left. More on the celebration. The crew was brought to Southampton. There were numerous dignitaries, news reporters, publicists, kinds of well-wishers. Everybody was eager to get a glance at this American girl. Awaiting her arrival was the sponsor of the flight, Amy Guest, and her husband. Amelia was very specific about giving credit to the crew and taking no credit for herself, but the masses did not hear about. Back home, the New York American lauded the triumph of Lindbergh and the lady who most nearly resembles him in character, appearance, and achievements. Soon, the media and the public would refer to her as Lady Lindy, a title she would always dislike. I was the passenger, just a passenger. There was some resentment among the British press. The British press cited the epic flights of two English women pilots, Lady Bailey and Lady Heath. Each of these women had made solo flights from South Africa to England and back. The crowd just wanted it. After arriving in Southampton, Lady Heath sent Amelia an offer of assistance and welcome. And 4 years later, so she establishes a friendship with Lady Heath, which 4 years later will be done. One, yeah.
Is the distance between South Africa and England greater than the distance between America and over the Atlantic?
You know what? I don't know.
Okay,
I
no,
mean, I would think,
might be similar.
it could be comparable, it could be a little less, a little more, but just the fact that, you know.
No, that's really far.
Yeah.
South Africa is at the bottom part.
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, and these women are pioneers.
Right.
They did that.
Exactly. That's amazing.
One aspect of Amelia that the British fans loved was her modest demeanor to audiences, along with her self-appreciating humor. And just in case she needed, there were always several publicists hovering close by at social functions, lending support and advice dealing with practical issues. She was managed. I mean, she was marketed, she was scheduled. When she leaves to come back to England, she takes a vessel. It's the SS Roosevelt. And she wants to get away from the crowd, and she's hanging around the bridge and spending a lot of time with the navigator. The navigator is Captain Harry Manning, and he would explain the basics of celestial navigation to her, some of which she understood, some of which didn't register. But They vowed to take a trip together sometime, and that would actually happen 9 years later. Meanwhile, back in America, George is handling all the requests for Amelia to speak, endorse their products, participate in ticker tape parades. He selected only 3 cities. 32 cities wanted to have a ticker tape parade. He selected Austin, New York, and Chicago. And while she hated all this publicity, she knew it would be the source of finance for her to continue her love of flight. Whenever she took a flight, whenever she would get ready to do something that she hadn't done before, she would write letters to her family. They were called popping off letters. In other words, hey, if I don't make it, this is what I was thinking. To her father, dearest Dad, hooray for the last grand adventure. I wish I'd won, but it was worthwhile anyway. To her mother, even though I lost, the adventure was still worth the while. She loved taking chances, fearless. As the challenges became bigger and the chances became bigger, sometimes things got out of sync. And she was not good on the little details. In 1932, the Great Depression grips the nation. Unemployment, soup kitchens, no jobs. They all combined to put a pall over America. But in the world of aviation, women are setting new records in speed, altitude, and distance. The 99s organization, that was an organization of women pilots. And that was very, very supportive to women who wanted to become pilots. To some of her colleagues, Amelia still felt not worthy of her feat of being the first woman to cross the Atlantic. It was time for her to solo. After 1 year of marriage with George, she told him her plans. They set up a schedule and a plan. An important step was to secure an expert pilot who could ready her plane and her skills. She asked this fellow, his name was Bernard Vulture. He was a flyer, he was an explorer, he was an adventurer. He'd been to both North and South Poles. Will you help me? Am I ready? Yes, he responded. So her plane needs a new engine, twice the power of wind burst, extra gas tanks with capacity of 3,200 gallons. That will cover the distance from Newfoundland to Paris and still have a buffer of 560 miles fuel left. Another major consideration is the weather. Dr. Kimball, he was one of the foremost weather advisors at the time. There weren't an awful lot of them. He would help her, he would guide her on the weather conditions. That could be critical because headwinds, fog, storms, they could all impact the flight. She was ready. She spent 4 years getting ready for this. And she's going to be on her own. Prior to takeoff, she says, "Do you think I can make it?" "You bet," he says. May 20th, the heavily loaded Vega takes off from Harbor Grace, uses less than 2,000 feet of runway. Once Putnam hears she's airborne, he calls a news conference. Quote, "Putnam sure of life's success," read the New York Times. I mean, she's just taken off. So, early in the flight, things start to go wrong. The altimeter needle breaks. She has no idea of what her depth is, how high or how low she is. Storms, the likes of which she had never seen before, rock and buffet the plane. The only light she has is coming from light. Ice is forming on the wing, so she has to go down lower where it's warm. She has no idea how close to the water she is. In the middle of the night, her fuel gauge breaks. Gas is dripping down the back of her neck. Still, she plows on. She has no radio. Amelia and radio is another good combination. It could be better, but she's been out of contact for over 13 hours. Her only hope is the increasing daylight. She's standing at the horizon. She sees a black line and she hopes it's a shoreline. The line grew and soon became mountains, and then railroad tracks appeared. Carefully, she searches the pasture land to make her landing. As cows are scrambling to get away, she spots a meadow and makes a perfect landing. A farmhand comes running over to her and said, "Have you flown far?" "From America," was her reply. New York Times said her time was 14 hours, 56 minutes. She said it was 13 hours, 60 minutes, 30 minutes, no matter what. She had clearly broken the record set in 1992. Not only was she the first woman to solo across the Atlantic in record time, she was also the first woman to cross it twice. It matched the skill of men carrying through the most difficult feats of high adventure. A cable from President Hoover. "You have demonstrated not only your own dauntless courage, but also the capacity of women to match the skill of men in carrying through the most difficult feats of high adventure. We congratulate you," the Lindbergh's killed. The world went wild with celebration over her deeds. The London Times wrote, "Not Americans only, not women only, but the whole world is proud of her." The London Sunday Express proclaimed, "A great girl." She meets George Patton in France. The French Senate give her the Cross of the Legion of Honor. King Albert of Belgium entertains them at his house, and he awards her the Cross of the Chevalier of the Order of Leopold. That's one thing after another.
Where did she actually come down? Where did she actually land?
It was in Wales, I think.
This was the first one. Did she live in France this time?
No, she landed in France. Yeah, Wales was the title of it. She landed in France. Yes.
We don't know where in France.
I think it wasn't Paris per se, but it was close to Paris. Back in America, joint session of the House and Senate awarded her the Distinguished Flying Cross. She's also awarded the National Geographic Society's Gold Medal. Richard Byrd, the Arctic explorer, says, "I know of no man who has more courage than she." Ticker tape parades, marching bands, huge crowds awaiting her arrival. Her life had become even more hectic following this cross. She's changing trains in the middle of the night. She's going to breakfast meetings, luncheons, afternoon teas, and one gala after another, and she's exhausted. But she's well aware that these activities place her securely in line for future challenges in the world of aviation. And the greatest challenge remaining is the flight around the world.
What year was this then? Did she land in France? Then she.
1932.
Hey,
So Anne Drill flies the Atlantic. She was, who was it that was in Patriot Stadium last month? Taylor Swift? I mean, people were nuts trying to get a hold of her. These were postal letters that George Putnam would sell for a handsome price. I mean, these are souvenirs. He just managed everything. After the flight, she continued flying, and she had mishaps. This is where she was landed in a field and hit a little bit of a trench, but she was all right. These things did not faze her at all. So here is the 99s. These are all women aviation pilots and aviation enthusiasts. And everybody wanted to be near her, to get her approval, to just spend time with her. This is her. The fellow to her left is navigator, Harry Newman. Harry Newman. If you think Stokes liked to drink, Harry Newman would put in the show. One of the speculations was a lot of the male flyers, this was such a hazardous, such a macho thing that alcohol was okay. Here's her plane that she flew to France. She was the only one, she was the solo. You never see a picture of her in the cockpit where she's not totally excited and enthused. She just loved flying. This is the reception in France. She's sitting on top of the plane. And in these crowds, they didn't know whether she was going to be there. So as soon as they realized who it is, huge crowds about. I think the plane, this is the plane she took to France, and I think it's in the Smithsonian Museum. Bright red. Twice the size of, the engine's twice the size of windows. So, this is the benefit of being a celebrity. She is writing for Cosmopolitan magazine. She'll tell you what you need to know about flying. This endorsement worked pretty well. This was not so well. This was endorsing Lucky Strikes. And the public did not really like that. A couple of people wrote in and said, I suppose you drink too. So George Putnam pulled this out of the endorsement. Here's, she's getting an award from President Hoover. She and Eleanor Roosevelt. They were very close. And there was speculation that the government, through Franklin and Eleanor, was very much involved. 1932 to 1935, one flight record after another is being established. Amelia continues to be one of the top leaders. In August 1932, she sets a woman transcontinental non-stop speed record from Los Angeles to Newark, non-stop, 19 hours and 15 minutes. A year later, she breaks that record, 17 hours and 47 minutes. In 1935, she becomes the first woman to fly from Honolulu to Oakland. She's also the first woman to solo anywhere in the Pacific. April 1935, she solos from LA to Mexico City. May, Mexico City to Newark. She sets a record for East-West Coast flying, Oakland, California to Honolulu. 15 hours and 52 minutes. And that is a lot of solo flying. And she's doing things that nobody else is doing. I mean, there were other pilots who were setting records. I mean, she was on the fast track. These were the years of triumph. With her successes, she gains access to many influential people. FDR and Eleanor, Charles and Anne Lindbergh, Mary Pickford. This closeness to many leaders allows her to advance her belief that women should have access to anything they choose. Her lecture book exploded. In 1935, George Putnam reported that Amelia had spoken 136 times before an audience totaling 80,000 people. And the money just keeps rolling in. Total income was $45,000 for speeches in 1935.
Is
When
that,
she was working at Denison House in Boston, she was paid $60 a month.
is the money going towards like her gas in her planes or something
Well,
like that, or I don't know, renting these
I-
planes, buying planes?
I think the money, excuse me. I think it's safe to say the money went to George first, and then George would decide. A lot of it went to his buying plans and everything. The one challenge remaining though is soul around the world. And she vowed she's never gonna make a transoceanic flight in a plane with only one engine. She needs a new plane. She chooses a Lockheed Electra. It's a twin engine plane. Oh, this is just an old picture of the flight. This is the new plane. It's a Lockheed Electra. Twin engine plane, cruising speed, 200 miles an hour, loaded with state-of-the-art equipment. She has a connection with Purdue University, which results in Purdue giving the plane to her outright through the Amelia Earhart Fund for Aeronautical Research, the pioneering in aviation education and technical experimentation. Basically, somehow a deal was worked out with Purdue. She's going to get this plane grants. Purdue will sponsor it. But it's also under the guise of the furthering aviation. She planned on flying the Electra engine for a year, just to do some research. But she made a decision fairly early. She's going to do the globe. She's going to fly around the equator, 27,000 miles. The plane is dubbed the Flying Laboratory. They began production on the plane in March of 1936. Here it is in the background. These are four men who had a direct influence on her flying ability. The fellow on the left is Paul Mance. He's a technical advisor. He is hired to kind of help her learn the nuances and all of the details of this plane. The fellow to her right is Harry Manning. He was the ship captain who taught her celestial navigation. And the fellow to the far right is Harry Newman, who is going to be the navigator.
She's quite tall.
Yeah. It had two 550 horsepower engines. It had an all-metal external surface, retractable landing gear and flaps, 55-foot wingspan, overall length of 38 feet. Let's see. She loved the fact that it was all shiny aluminum. The aluminum surface gleamed beautiful. In the aft cabin, all the way at the back, was a navigator's table with charts and flight data. So she's in the cockpit all the way in the front. All the way in the back is the navigator. He's got his charts, he's got a little table there. The only way they can communicate is they have a bamboo fishing rod that will send a message from him to her and vice versa. I'm not making this up. I mean, this is. But anyway, they also have extensive modifications in the fuel system and radio equipment. She has 6 fuel tanks in the fuselage and extra tanks in the wings. Gives her a capacity of 1,150 gallons. Fully loaded, the gross weight of the plane without fuel exceeds the normal weight limit by 50%. So she's carrying a lot of weight. Of particular importance is the extensive amount of radio equipment. This is essential due to large distances. Messages had to travel over the radio networks. Much of the new equipment was still developmental. That wasn't an option for Amelia. She really understood what it looked like. She did not even know Morse code. Recognizing the need for help, George Bucknell hired Paul Nance as a technical advisor for the flight. Nance he's got a type A personality, strong personality, and he and she clash over these things. This is the flying laboratory. She flew to Pearl Harbor, and she was going to go from Honolulu to California this way. It would be the first leg of the trip. But what happened was, it was all serviced, everything was ready to go. She's taxiing down right away, and she loses control. And the plane almost totally disintegrates. It's a crash, and she gets out of the plane, and she's literally dumbfounded. So something happened. What she was doing was, on a 2-engine plane, apparently she wasn't that good with synchronizing both engines. And so she got them almost where one was competing with the other. The plane lost stability and control. That took off. This was a real setback to her. And this was telling. They sent the plane back to California. It was completely refurbished. We paid us for everything. And she's going to get another try. One of the theories was it was sent back to California. While it was in California, there was some extremely high-tech, very, very ultra-modern, very, very high-capability photographic equipment on the plane. Speculation is that it was put on the plane so that as she would be flying over some islands in the Pacific that were alienated to the Japanese, she could get photographs. So it was wink, wink, and that's what I shot there. That's the theory. Never been proven. And here's the map. She is going to go from Oakland, Miami, South America, across Africa, across Pakistan, Singapore. And the last stop is Lae, L-A-E. Lae is in New Guinea. One of the things that was a major accomplishment was, to do this, you had to have clearance to go from each country to the next country. And you had to have passports, and you had to have, all of the necessary documentation. And they did it. I mean, it took a long time to get all the accessibility on paperwork. So the last flight is in New Guinea. It's 11. She is flying to There's going to be gin and tonic.
Next time, Bob.
So she's going to fly to Lae, from Lae to Howland Island. Howland Island is where she is to land from Letter. It's the last stop before she heads to America. It was a speck. It was from Lay to Hollow Island, it was 2,586 miles. Hollow Island is near the equator. This always bothered her, that this Latin thing was so far away. And there's nothing, once you leave Lay, there's nothing. She wanted to, okay. Hollow Island is just over 2 miles long, by a half a mile wide. It's got a total land area of 0.8 of a mile, square mile. They had 3 150-foot runways built on this island years before, 2 or 3 years before the flight. And they sent Hawaiian kids and a few soldiers and civilian contractors to make runways for the island. It was a nickel and dime operation. This is a global flight across the world, and they're using one bulldozer and 6 people, and they depend upon the Coast Guard cover. It's definitely something to do. But Holland Island is the destination. Before she left Lay, she's worried about it. And Newman is drinking more and more and more. But they've gone all the way around to Lay in the beginning. So, I mean, they're nearing the end. She's lost faith in his ability. She asks a radio operator in Lay, as in Harry Belford. She asked him, would you go? Would you be the navigator to the trip to Lay? He declines. He said there was an air of doom about this, and hence he said no. The night before she was to take off from Lay to go to Hollywood, Milton went on a bed. He didn't get back to his room until 45 minutes before the wake up. As he got in the plane, he had a headache. They took off. Once they were airborne, here's where there's a lot of controversy, a lot of challenge, a lot of information that doesn't make sense, but some of it does. Radio communication. They were supposed to use 2 different channels on the radio, one to receive and one to transmit. The radio signals were going to go to the Coast Guard cover. There's a picture of Holland Island. The highest point on Holland Island is 18 feet. And you're going to go 2,500 miles to find it. She didn't know Morse code. She didn't even take the key that you would use to transmit messages. She left that alone. She said, I don't need this. So this is the kind of thing where she's really taking a chance. She's got a navigator. I wouldn't take a bus with. They got a long journey. She doesn't understand the electronics. Some of the equipment is so technical, it's still not up to speed. So there's a lot of things surrounding this journey. Ultimately, she gets lost. They keep sailing up. The Coast Guard coming, which is the only, here's Holland Island. Okay, she's down somewhere on the Pacific. World plane is missing in shock area. This is the Itasca. This was the Coast Guard cutter that was assigned to watch and receive her messages and to guide her. And they would get garbled messages. Some that just couldn't make out at all. Some were like minimum volume. And either way, things were not going well. And the plane keeps flying she's lost. And basically, she has no idea where she is. And ultimately, she does crash into the Pacific. This was the chief radio man, and he was a very capable guy, but he couldn't make hide and hair out of it. There's George Putnam, high-powered Madison Avenue guy. Just a couple other things here. The search. It covered an area of almost 300,000 square miles. Ultimately involved 4,000 men, 10 ships, and 65 aircraft. This is an unprecedented amount of people and equipment searching for her. July 17th. On July 3rd, the county of Lexington was in San Diego. It takes her 11 days to get to Holland Island to get her. The search goes on and on and on. They come up. They ultimately called the search off at the end of July. 25,000 miles. A Royal Navy survey conducted. The waters around the area was so full of sharks that if she ever hit under the water, she was no way to survive. So, what happened? And these are the theories. One theory is she was lost at sea with Milton. Another theory is she was captured by the Japanese on one of the islands. And she was taken to Japan, and she was used as a propaganda radio house, like a Tokyo Army. Another theory is she was kept prisoner in Japan and Korea. She came back to the United States completely with a new name, new identity. Never mentioned Amelia Earhart. There were reports of Henry operators all over the country that picked up transmissions from her, and so they said. And the thing is, I don't know how radios, but you can get messages from long distance if you know what you're doing and the conditions are. A lot of speculation. The government, the government just is totally tight with things. They do not release any records, any information whatsoever. So there are, this is kind of like, well, comparison, another comparison. The treasure of all God, the story of this treasure, how it's buried in the stuff. It is a mystery. Nobody really knows. But it's not far from the realm of possibility, in my opinion, that she was probably carrying a lot of photographic equipment because she didn't know about it there. And Franklin wanted to know what was going on in the Pacific. Germany's headed towards war. The Pacific, the Japanese are doing things that we don't know what on their islands. So it could have been an innocent flight where she just got lost. It could have been complicated. You have to answer the question. And I'm not sure the answer. So,
Not sure, but specifically on that, did they navigate primarily by compass?
there was some celestial navigation. He had a window in the back. Some compass, but it was, the distances are so immense, and without having an accurate position, an accurate reading where you are, you're just basically reading the line. You might be only a couple miles off, but that area, if you keep going, could be 500 miles. So
It struck me of that whole trip, that was the riskiest part, because it's 2,000 miles away more from where she started in Lake, and there's really no place else to put down.
no place. Yeah. And they had a Coast Guard guy, one ship that was supposed to handle, all of the communication. It was I don't know how much the government was directly involved or indirectly involved, but from a support standpoint, yeah, they didn't give her a lot of help. Now, probably not correct to say this, but she in some cases it was her own worst enemy. And she literally flew by the seat of her pants sometimes. On a 2,586 mile trip with a joint navigator.
But if you do that across the country, you still could maybe find a cornfield someplace.
Yeah.
But if you're heading out into the middle of the ocean.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a picture of the Hawaiian Islands are up top, down at the bottom is Howland Island, Bacon Island, and Jarvis. She missed it completely. Somebody said they found the skull and they found the shoe that they thought was hers. Some people claim they saw her in Japan, also in South Carolina. She was taken to South Carolina for a while. There's a lot of different arrows with women. It's very reading. So,
You said there were some radio transmissions, however, were unwell received, but could they determine from the last radio transmission how far she had got from Lay?
I couldn't, I think she was probably very, very close to Holland or maybe within the 500, she might have been north or she might have been east or west. Yeah, she got a long ways from because she was running out of gas. So, anybody else? Yeah.
But what do you think about her, her father and their attitude towards her career? Very often when you get someone who's as strong a daughter as that, you have a strong mother as well.
Yeah, the mother, I think the mother had her act squared away. She was supportive and she was pretty well squared away. The father, like this office, was reassigned to a lesser job in the railroad because of alcohol. Ultimately, exploited and she was half like me. She could only, she wasn't, she loved flying, she loved taking chances. Much, she, her philosophy was, if you're worried about it, go ahead and do it. Because if you don't do it, you never know. It's kind of simple. And her popping out was like, well, just because I didn't make it doesn't mean it wasn't fun. She's very, very interesting. But people loved her.
Where was she from again?
She was born in Atchison, Kansas.
Kansas, thank you.
What year did she marry?
She probably married him, 32, maybe 31. Sure.
Do you have any opinion on maybe another occasion she wouldn't have done such a risky flight with somebody like Newman, but she was wanting to set a record, I think partly right for the time around the world, that maybe she made a rational decision that she would have otherwise?
I think what happened is when she took the flying laboratory on that first flight in Hawaii and she cracked it up, that reversed the direction of the trip. So that Lay ended up being the audience of there were signs. The men in her life, they drank a lot, but when they were sober, they said, look, you gotta do this, you can't do that. She was headstrong. And she had all of this momentum and adulation behind her. As there was more and more flights, more and more aviation, people started to say, well, that's a waste of money. I mean, you're trying to demonstrate a voyage around the world and acclimate people to flying, but people already know how to fly these distances. The The coincidence was what was it, last week, the missing submarine? It was the same situation. You know, you got the Royal Navy, Canadian Navy, American Navy, half of corporate America looking for this sub. And if you look off the coast of Greece, you got 700 migrants drowning while they were watching. Not a Mediterranean skirmish. Yeah, the whole, there's an article all of this high risk tourism. Is it much? Okay, anybody else?
I mean, Amelia's been recognized for basically doing around the world practically. She missed the last 3,000 miles.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So she's getting credit
Oh,
for
yeah.
doing 99% of that
Yeah,
trip.
yeah, no,
You know,
she-
so at least you're like, okay, but at least, I mean, I'm sorry you died, but at least you got 99% of the way there.
Yeah, and George wrote a book, you know, he wrote a book, he wrote a couple of books about her, you know, final flight and everything. Yeah, he would leave no stone unturned to capitalize on
How old was she disappeared?
it. She was born in 1897, so she was before 1937. Yeah, amazing.